Good evening, friends. My name is Sally Queen, and I'm the district superintendent in the Catawba Valley District. And I'm really grateful that you're joining the Equip and Connect on evangelism. Tonight, we are joined by someone who is part of our home conference, but we are sharing her with the Missouri conference right now. So I want to introduce you to Morgan Goymer, who is a provisional member in our annual conference. She grew up in Louisiana, found her way to Duke Divinity School, and found her way to the Northern Piedmont District. And so she connected to us that way, and then is sent off into the great world of our connection and is serving in the Gathering, which is a church that was started by Matt Miofsky, which many of you may be aware of some of Matt's work, and you've connected with him in different ways. And Morgan is planting a church as part of the Gathering, and I'm certain she will tell us much more about that tonight. But we are grateful that she can be among home folk and grateful for the ministry that she provides. So I want to offer us a blessing as we get started. It comes from a book called Ordinary Blessings by Meta Herrick Carlson. And this one is for the neighborhood, because I just want to invite us to think about our neighbors. So will you hear these words? For the neighborhood. The old maple trees along the boulevard have barley roots that rise up, causing my sidewalk to buckle. But I can't stay mad about the concrete cracks for long. Their leaves like rouge apologies each autumn, so fierce and sincere. I can tell you the names of dogs who promenade like clockwork, dragging their humans towards squirrels or looking smug while poop is collected from the lawn. Sometimes the widow next door plays hopscotch. Kids giggle and hold her cane, then help carry her groceries to the door. We're losing our battle to her crabgrass, but I'd rather lose together than win without her. I'd rather lose together than win without her. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. That was beautiful. Did you have anything else you wanted to
Oh,
share?
that's great. Turn it over to you, Morgan.
Thanks, Sally. I love that because it talks so much about our neighborhood, and I love all these details because that's what really I think it's a great kickoff to evangelism is the details of your community and what do you notice, who do you notice, and how do you bring them into what you're doing with the church. So I would like to start sharing my screen and kind of share a presentation with you today about evangelism. And a little bit about community and how we can look to the outside of our church as opposed to turning inward, which often can be easier, can be kind of the only option when there are tons of meetings, when there are a lot of decisions needing to be made, a lot of pastoral care. But I really think evangelism allows not only for our church to grow, but it also allows us to think a little further down the line who will continue on the church's mission to make disciples of the world, who will change the world, not only just for the better, but in Jesus's mission. So I'm thankful that we get to do this tonight, that we get to talk about this. I wanted to share a little bit about who I am. Sally did a great introduction and shared kind of the highlights, but I wanted to share what my not only just last year, but actually kind of my intro into evangelism has been. It wasn't in my intro to evangelism class in seminary, although, that was still a great moment to get to talk about what evangelism looks like. It actually started way back when I was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. That's where I grew up. I felt a calling to ministry at 15, 16, and I've been United Methodist almost all my life since I was about 2 years old. People remember me from my home church in diapers, running around the sanctuary, being there all the time. And even at a young age, I really loved to be a part of the church. There was a lot to the church that I wanted to do. I wanted to be on the committees. I wanted to go to the meetings as a teenager, which everyone thought was very weird. I wanted to lead my youth group and I wanted to invite people. That was a huge part of my high school. I invited people often to church to come with me, um, partially because I thought that's what you had to do, but also because I loved my church and I wanted other people to experience that. When I went to college, I went to Louisiana State University. I stayed close to home, and I grew a lot in ministry in those 4 years. I was a part of my Wesley Foundation, but especially in my last year, I took an internship with a church plant in Baton Rouge. It was technically a semester, but it felt about it felt like a year with how much just work there was to be done in planting a church. But the memory I want to really leave with you is not it's not all about church planting because that's a whole other conversation. What I remember is a lot of the meetings that happened that I would go meet with the pastor and we talk about the week or we talk about my insights. We would always go to a place called Simply Joe's Cafe, which is, I believe, still there in a place called Mid City with the pastor. And every time we'd walk in, everyone knew who this pastor was. He would get in line, the owner, the cook, who often were both, the woman who checked him out knew his order. The people who were regulars always said hey to him. And I remember sitting there realizing, oh my gosh, this guy not only comes here a lot, but also is known by this community. And I love that. I love that idea that a pastor is known by their community. And I started to see in other ways that he did his ministry with this church plant. In particular, this area was just up and starting. It was starting to thrive in Baton Rouge. It was kind of a neighborhood of Baton Rouge, if you will. And I remember there was a kind of it's almost like a chamber of commerce, but just a little bit different. It was called Maker Society, and it was the people who owned shops, who owned the businesses there. And before he even had a church building, before he even launched the church, he was invited to be a part of this community where no other pastor was. And I remember that was so profound that he showed up, that people saw him as a member, not only a member of the community, but an owner within the community and someone who was who they trusted to be a part of making decisions for their community. And I think that really shaped me into the pastor I wanted to be. Um, Also, during that time, one of my dear friends, who also became a Western North Carolina resident for a little while before she passed, Angie Roberson, she was one of my dear mentors, and she was planting a church in Louisiana. And I remember meeting with her at Waffle House in the area she planted her church before it even started. And right before I could sit down, she said, "Welcome to my office." Because she didn't have a building, she didn't have an office, but it wasn't about that she couldn't find one. You know, there are lots of churches around. It was that this is where her people were. And so to me, that's what evangelism is going to where your people are. And your people aren't just the people who sit on the pews on Sunday. It's the people that live and breathe and do life around your community. That's me, this little intro slide. So I am part of the gathering, and this idea of evangelism is baked into who we are. We talk about the idea of evangelism, or in our words, invitation, as a key practice for our site and church. So the gathering as a whole, you see the mission and vision. The vision is that the gathering exists to create a Christian community that is compelling for new generations of people. So new generations, the next generation, the young people that are coming up, we want to make sure that we are thinking about them primarily in what we do. And our primary task is to invite new people to become deeply committed followers of Christ. Here, we like to say that this is broken into kind of the two tenets of Methodism, discipleship and evangelism. But evangelism for us leads the way. We want to invite new people. This is huge for as we've been starting a new site, but especially as we started the gathering as a church plant. Inviting new people means we want to make sure we're going out there inviting people. So we want to make sure that we're telling people about the church, but especially new people, not just the people at First Church down the street, but genuinely new people who have never really encountered the authentic Christ that we talk about. I've been helping start their Metro East site. Many of you probably don't know the geography of St. Louis. So if you know generally where St. Louis is, which is on the far east side of Missouri, if you just cross over the Mississippi River by about 30 minutes from St. Louis, you'll hit O'Fallon, Illinois. That's where my house is. That's where we're worshiping currently, and that's where we're planting our new site. There's a number of reasons for that, but again, we'll have planting conversation another time. But these are just two of our events that we had throughout throughout our time as we prepped and previewed for launching. We launched on January 11th officially. But I wanted to share these two pictures because these are some of our most highly attended events in what we were doing. We had a fall family event where we bought the ticket to kind of a local fun farm for kids, had a bonfire, and we had 60 people show up with like 30 kids. And it was just incredible because it was one of the biggest events we had had so far that were not worship. And it really brought in new families who were just trying to check us out. And so I really loved that moment. It was fun. A lot of families got to grow together. And then our third preview worship before or third and fourth preview worship was at Dogwood Social. Those grew in huge ways. And this is actually, you can see our worship space right in this picture. This is where we worship every single Sunday. And a huge part of our whole process has been what I'm about to talk to you about, which is evangelism, inviting new people. And I taught my launch team in different ways. Yes, Sally.
So you may be going to touch on this, but I'm just curious, like that people might be wondering, hey, well, we've done a bonfire
Yeah.
before, but it was just the people at my church that came.
Hmm.
So, like, how did you get people who really were new and different?
Yeah. So I will kind of I'll just share a little bit right here of, we had a process working with a group of people called a launch team. So I will share a little bit about what a launch team is there, and I can actually go forward because that's kind of our next slide. Um, we'll go back to read Luke together. So we have three different types of connections in what we call it's called connections for us, but it's three different ways of people can engage with our community. The first one is leadership. So I can start with that because to plant a site or a church, a traditional way of planting is usually you have something called a launch team or a leadership team or a dream team, I've heard it called. But in kind of churches that already exist, your leadership team are these people, your most dedicated people to what you're doing. They're the people who should know what your mission and vision is. And maybe that's not very clear, but they know what it means to be a part of your church. They usually have something they love about your church, and usually they have something they'd want to change about your church. And you might hear more of the changing, but the people in leadership really care deeply about wanting the church to succeed. And so for us, that was our launch team. When we didn't have any worship service, they were the people most dedicated to what we were doing. And the reason how we got 60 people to a bonfire of mostly new people is we had some launch team meetings to kind of teach people what it meant to be a part of the gathering. Part of that teaching was to say, we believe in inviting new people and literally teaching them what it means to invite new people, which I'll get to in a little bit as well. And a part of that was we had summer events. Family and friend events is what we called them because we didn't have worship. And so we just said, hey, leadership team, launch team, this is your opportunity. Invite a friend, invite a family member from your church. We're not going to talk about, all of our church life. We might mention where we're at and who we are as a church, but it's a time to really connect with a new community, to make new connections, and then invite people to your worship service. And it seems daunting. It seems really hard when it's not practiced, but it's something that when you can have something low stakes like your bonfire, to simply tell your leadership team, hey, invite a friend, invite a family member, just let them know we're having a fun time. We'd love for them to connect with our church. That could be a very easy entry. Another way, if your leadership team is like, well, all my friends go to church, which I've heard that before. Try your next door neighbor who doesn't go to church or the neighbor of the literal neighbor of the church, knock on their door and say, hey, we have a bonfire. We'd love for you to come. Here's some more information. It seems scary at first, but we'll talk a little bit about the people that you know in your lives in just a second. But I did want to go back because you see scripture here. I went a little too far back. I was wondering, Sally, would you read this? It's Luke 1,
Oh,
1 through 12.
sure. After these things, the Lord commissioned 72 others and sent them on ahead in pairs to every city and place he was about to go. He said to them, the harvest is bigger than you can imagine, but there are few workers. Therefore, plead with the Lord of the harvest to send out workers for his harvest. Go. Be warned, though, that I'm sending you out as lambs among wolves. Carry no wallet, no bag, no sandals. Don't even greet anyone along the way. Whenever you enter a house, first say, may peace be on this house. If anyone there shares God's peace, then your peace will rest on that person. If not, your blessing will return to you. Remain in this house, eating and drinking whatever they set before you, for workers deserve their pay. Don't move from house to house. Whenever you enter a city and its people welcome you, eat what they set before you. Heal the sick who are there and say to them, God's kingdom has come upon you. Whenever you enter a city and the people don't welcome you, go out in the streets and say, as a complaint against you, we brush off the dust of your city that has been collected on our feet. But know this, God's kingdom has come to you. I assure you that Sodom will be better off on Judgment Day than this city.
Thank you for sharing that. This passage is one that I'm sure you all have heard before. It's one that we get the phrase shake the dust off your feet." That comes from the scripture, and I wanted to break it down just a little bit before we get into the very practical side of it because I use this as my scripture with my launch team. This is a huge passage on invitation, on being in community, and on evangelism. It's one that often is used as a way of going to city and proclaiming the good news. And it gets a heavy burden, I think, on a lot of churches, and a heavy expectation. But I really see this much more as a practical way of invitation within your own community. Um, the world of Jesus looks very different than the world of today. And I see Jesus doing a lot of things here, but especially he's calling people out to a community and inviting them into the vision of peace, into the message of hope and the gospel that Jesus has shared. And so what I see is there is a team of people that knows what Jesus wants them to talk about. Jesus is not going to send people who don't know what's going on. He knows that there are people, his disciples, who know his message. And so he sends out people who know the vision of what they're doing. And so I often say that would be the launch team, the leadership teams of churches. They know the vision of their church. And so they're invited, not only by the pastor, who may sound like a gong at times of just going on and on about evangelism and inviting, but Jesus is calling us to invite. And what it looks like for Jesus to call leadership teams, churches, lay people, pastors to invite, it looks like going into a community, spreading that message of peace, healing the sick and poor, and also welcoming their hospitality. And I say that because there are people who are needing those messages of healing, of peace, of love. And we think, oh, our church can't really work with people in our community. But there are people who need to hear that message, and the church is called to spread that message out there. And on top of it, Jesus says this really important part about evangelism that I think is a calling to us. When you go to a city and you're accepted by a city, when you are planted in a city, when you have a church already in a city, right? If we apply that to today, when a community welcomes you in, you are to be with them, to eat with them, to receive the blessing of gifts and hospitality, the blessing that this community has to offer. And I don't know your community very well. I know my community very well because that's what I've been doing for a year now. But I would bet that you know the joys of your community, the hospitality that you've experienced, whether that's in the local restaurant, whether that's the store clerk that you go to every week for groceries, whether that's your bank teller, whether that's your neighbors. I've heard lots of stories, so I'm not going to prescribe it onto you, but I believe that you have experienced that hospitality of a community. And what does Jesus say? But to be there, to stay there, to sit among them and eat what they give you, which means to receive what they are giving you and share the message of peace and love that not only Jesus offers, but your church hopefully is offering. And so that's kind of the main parts I want to share. But that last part we will get to in a second about shaking the dust off your feet because we just went over leadership. I say there are three types of connections, but I put it in parentheses or in quotes, because there's actually four in this scripture passage, names it. So we at the gathering, we kind of have these four groupings that we like to start listing people that we connect with. It seems very clinical almost, But when you start to see who these people are, you can start to really connect with people intentionally in your community. I'm trying to see what my next slides are. Okay, let me go back and break this down. So we talked about leadership already. Many of you who are lay people may be on leadership, pastors. This is including you. You're the people who are committed to what the church is doing. You're the sustainers of the church. You're the ones who are making the decisions, and you're the ones leading the way. Then we have our attendees group. Now, these are the people who show up every week, but they're probably not too committed. Every church has a few of these, if not a lot of these. Our church, we do have a lot more attendees than leadership, which is a little intentional for a number of reasons that I won't really get into. But attendees are the people who will kind of make up your critical mass, which is kind of the word of they're the people who will fill your pews on a Sunday. And those are the people, again, they may not fully understand your mission and vision yet. That's a part of the leadership work, but they're people who love what you're doing. They hear the messages that you're sharing of love and peace and healing, and they want to be a part of it. And then you have your supporters. The supporters are the people who they may not show up, they may not lead, but they're the people who will be able to um, I'll give you an example. They're the people who, if you were to call up your bank teller and say, hey, we're looking for a new bank or we're looking for a new loan for our church for a building we're doing, they'll be the ones to connect you with the people who will help you do that. There'll be the coffee shops that have an extra room that maybe they'll waive the fee for you because you show up every week at coffee. Um, I see supporters as, for example, our Chamber of Commerce I'm a part of. And they have, in many ways, not only connected people to our church, but also connected me to other organizations to be pastors in outside of our church building. So for me, the chamber is a huge supporter of what we're doing. And it's really brought in a lot of new connections. It's allowed me to enter into the community a lot faster than I could have ever if I didn't have them. So I see the supporters as people who they're probably not going to show up on a Sunday, but they're still critical relations to doing what you're doing every single week. And I always think that, your attendees list should probably be the longest of all the lists, but you do want to have supporters in your corner. I remember I met with one of the first people I met with was a commercial real estate agent who was also Methodist in the area. And she let me know she was not going to change her church over to the Gathering because we are Methodist. But she has been periodically, probably every 6 months, checking in and saying, hey, I haven't seen any buildings, but I'm still looking for you. Should the time come for you needing to have a building? And I check in with her every so often. How you doing? How are things going? And I just find that it's really critical as you get to know your community to have these people. I think honestly that already committed churches have a lot of supporters, but the leadership doesn't always get together to think of them like this, because you guys live in your community, you breathe in your community. And so for me, I would start thinking about who are the supporters that you could lean on for a bonfire event. Hey, we're having a bonfire event. We're doing intentional invitation. Does someone have a backyard or does someone have a park that they know could waive a fee for us? So that's just kind of some three categories that we at the Gathering like to keep track of. We want to be making sure attendees are the people we're connecting to the most, but supporters are always helpful as well. And then the fourth group are the naysayers. So Jesus talks about shaking the dust off your feet. Not everyone's going to be interested in what you're doing. I've met with an organization that was a really awesome opportunity to be in high schools and do Bible study in high schools. It's a local organization. And we at the Gathering are an openly affirming church of LGBTQ people. And this organization was not interested in working with us. To me, I could have probably been upset and could have said, well, that's not really fair of you to not allow me to do this. But at the end of the day, we were cordial to each other. He honestly was told me that he would support me support me to other pastors and the local community. And so even though I'm not going to work with his organization, he's not going to necessarily come to my organization. We're still going to be mutual and cordial with each other. And I just move on. There are other people who are looking for the message that we have to offer in this community. But what Jesus says, and I want to point this out because this is super important. Not only are you shaking the dust off your feet, you're still sharing the message. the thing is about this passage is Jesus says to say the same message to every city, no matter if they don't want your message or they do. And so what that says to me is you as a leader, you as a pastor, you want to be knowing the vision that you're sharing and not shying away from it. Because I could have lied. I could have said, yeah, no, we don't really, we're not affirming. But that's not what we believe. It's important to us. And so we knew our vision and we weren't going to shy away from that at any point. And so I hope when you maybe meet someone who's maybe not as interested in your church, you don't shy away from the amazing work that you are doing, but instead allow it to keep moving on to the people who will hear. Okay, I'm
Well,
gonna
and
move on.
Morgan,
Yeah, go
just
ahead.
thinking about that, I wonder, like that's authentic too.
Yeah.
And that becomes, in my opinion, perhaps an evangelism strategy is to
Yes.
just is to present our authentic self, to not
Yes.
try to be who we aren't, but to be who we are. And to me, that speaks a lot for the Christ in us.
Yeah,
So I love that.
exactly. Yes, I totally agree with you. Yeah,
And
I
that
mean,
probably says a whole lot to the people we're trying to connect with.
hmm
Um, that
Yeah.
we're going to be authentic. We're not going to, like you said, say, oh, no, you're right. That's not what we really do. But
hmm
rather to say, yeah, that's who we are.
Right, right, exactly. And I'm not going to change, well, I can't change our whole church, but I'm not going to change our site stance for maybe one organization or a few people who
Right.
maybe not agree with what we're doing. Yeah, and it showed, you're right, it shows a lot to your attendees, the supporters, and the leadership team that you're being authentic in
Mhm.
who you are. Um, yeah. Are there any questions before I kind of move on to the next step?
I think you've covered that beautifully. And I think that this translates into, like, obviously, you're speaking from a new church
Yeah,
plant, a new church start, but I think this translates beautifully into the context of an established church.
yeah.
You have your leaders, you have
hmm
your kind of 20% that do 80% of the work.
Yep, yep,
Those are your leaders. And then you have, a lot of people who are connected to your church and show up and are supporters.
right.
Um, but they maybe aren't your leaders. And then you
Yeah,
have people that are, I think supporters is, a connection, a community connection that you have.
yes.
Um, uh, Somebody who knows where to send somebody else if they're
hmm
looking for what your church has to offer. Um,
Exactly.
and then, yes, of course, we encounter many naysayers,
Yes, there's a
but
lot
I
of
love
them.
it. Jesus instructs us just to give them peace and
Yeah, we'll move on.
Mhm.
And the supporters, I do want to say, one thing that came to mind as you're talking, um, I totally blanked what I was going to say. Then it's not important. We're going to keep going. But you said it, you summed it up very well. And I think, yeah, I think to me, uh, church plants are very hard. It's why not a lot of people do it. And I think when you have already the resources of leadership and attendees, and you're going to have supporters as well, because all of you are connected in some way. There's a lot of opportunity for evangelism and outreach. Okay, so I share these types of connections because for us, it's important to keep track of kind of who we are meeting with, who we're connecting with in the community. So let's talk about how we actually connect with people in the community. Um, because while those are categories of people that you could name right now, probably in your church or who you've encountered, it's important to start talking about who are those people outside of your church. So for us, we've had 0 people when we when we started day one. A leadership team did quickly form. This is actually a part of our launch team, and I'll explain what event this is. So you can kind of see some of our launch team folks, but also, we all had to invite attendees, meet people who we knew in our lives. We had to build a relationship with supporters. And a lot of my launch team and leadership team knew people that I could connect with who would be supporters for us as well. So this picture is fun. This is us in the middle of summer at a place called, it's an event called City Fest. Um, it is an O'Fallon yearly ritual and tradition that has been happening for a while now. They do a parade and then have a whole weekend long of activities. They're going to switch it a little bit to celebrate the bicentennial, but we're still involved in the parade, which I'll get to in a second. I basically just emailed someone and wanted to learn more about the community. So I sat on City Fest board. I didn't do much, to be honest with you, but we were able to be a part of the parade. I was able to volunteer at the event and get to be deeper a part of this. And so this is kind of us getting ready to march in the parade. We had our t-shirts on, and um, I think that's really important because it's a very easy way to just say, yes, I'm going to do this. What's really incredible, I do want to say, is the person with the cowgirl hat in this group picture. It was a busy week. This time of the year was a busy week for me. And she kind of called me like a month before and said, don't worry about the trailer decor. We're going to do it. I'm going to get it together. Just have some people help me out. And honestly, she led the way in doing that. So that was a really beautiful moment of leadership that I want to encourage you. Even small acts like that can be huge for pastors and being a part of community events. So spheres of influence, I shared this with my launch team because I think this is the way to evangelize. At least there are a lot of ways. I think this is my favorite way to evangelize. I should say that. That's my personal opinion. Because it's not about standing on the street corner and yelling at people and telling them to come to your church, or telling them that salvation will only come if they come to your church. It's about truly living in the life that you have and seeing where you can connect with people most. So I did this basically, I printed out a map of what we call the Metro East, which is basically the east side of the river, or the east part of St. Louis in Illinois. And so it's a large area. A lot of our people live all over it. And so I printed out the maps and I had them basically in their map or in their city, um, put dots, all the places that they went to each week, their work, the grocery store, their kids' school, uh, the different stores that they would go to. I kind of mentioned that already, groceries, fun activities, parks, workout gyms. I asked them to put dots everywhere. And then I started to combine them together. And when you start to see, we had a launch team of that was actually that meeting was 35 people, but we had about 60 people. So when you start to see one person's sphere of influence connect with all of these people, you start to see that the entire city is being influenced by you or your church. And it's a great activity. I won't necessarily do it today, but I want to invite you, at least whether it's in your church, at your next leadership team meeting, or just you yourself at home, print out a map of, 5-10 mile radius and mark all the places that you go to, the people that you think about the people you interact with. And what I call those, that's sphere of influence. It comes from from organizing. Um, who are the people that you can kind of talk to? Who are the people that organizers can compel to help them organize even further? That's a bigger concept, but for the church, I really believe that this is where we have greatest impact. The people who know us. And it's not just about going up to I keep using grocery clerk. I don't even have one of those, but you know what I mean. The grocery clerk, hairdresser, all of that. It's not just about going up to them and being like, oh, come to my church, but you know them. You know the life that they live. Many of you know neighbors and friends who are having a hard time in our world today. We often say that Christmas is one of the hardest times for your friends and family, especially if they don't have a church community. Um, not Some people love it and it's great, but many people have experienced a loss of a family member or a loved one. Many people are alone on Christmas. Many people are away from their family or their kids for the first time. And some people don't have family to celebrate with in the sense of they only have their little ones and it's a new experience. And so we often say Christmas it's not a time of invitation in a manipulative way. It's a time of invitation for people to feel healing and community in a time when it's really hard. So I say that because you know your community best. And what does it mean to go to someone who you know who doesn't have a community or is asking really big questions, but they don't have a church that they're connected to, who has gone through a really big trauma and is looking for a space that they can talk about it without being judged. Another great way, there's a lot of people we're noticing with the gathering who are in recovery and they don't have a safe, unshameful place to talk about it. So I say all this because these are your avenues to really talk to people about church, to invite them to a space that you believe in, a space that is healing, that is a message of peace and a message of love. Because who doesn't want that in our world today that's so divided? I wanted to share this because I wanted to share an example for you because it's Western North Carolina, and it's someone who I look up to. I don't know if he'll watch this or ever see this, but um, it's his story has always really empowered me as I've gone from seminary into my ministry. Many of you may know Dustin Mailman. He does Deep Time. And I've gotten to sit down with him, hear how he started it. I really love what he is doing. I can't sing his praises enough. But when I talk to him and to hear how he even got this idea or where it came from, because, he wasn't formally incarcerated as far as I know. Spheres of influence was honestly how he started this whole awesome, amazing ministry he's doing. Because he was appointed in Asheville and started to attend local meetings, started to be a part of the community that he was in, and started to realize that there is a major gap between people who are formerly incarcerated and becoming re-entering society is what they're called, or becoming members of society afterwards. And what that's called is there's a high recidivism rate in Asheville. And he started to notice that. He started to sit on boards. He started to hear that as the conversation, as a reality of their community. And he started to wonder, well, what is the reason? There's a lot of I've worked in Haywood County for a little bit, or near Haywood County. I know there are a lot of resources there for a lot of different people. And so why is that the case? He started to ask that question. And he started to realize that it wasn't housing, and it wasn't necessarily that there weren't enough resources in certain areas, but what was the issue was there not enough paying jobs that would hire people who were formerly incarcerated. And you can hear his whole story. I won't get into all of it, but it was through his connections to Chamber of Commerce, through city council meetings, through meeting with prisons and local people who were formerly incarcerated, with other churches, that he started to realize this was a major need in the community. And not only that, he also loved coffee. I do too, which is why I love what they're doing. Part of why I love what they're doing. And he started to see that there's no roaster in Asheville, or at least barely any, even though there's so many coffee shops. And he only would know that because he went to the coffee shops and he talked to people who were there. And so this idea came from his spheres of influence. This idea, he started just to talk to people, to ask questions, see what's really needed. And I think spheres of influence can be used if you're revisioning for a church. So if you're starting to think, what are we doing in our community? But it's also a great way for you to grow your church, to evangelize, to meet new people, to invite people into a space of healing. And so ultimately, Dustin started Deep Time, which is a place that hires and offers a livable wage to formerly incarcerated folks. And they roast coffee, and they've been doing a great job. And so I say that as an example because you know it, but also because it's a really beautiful way of utilizing these spheres of influence to create that message and the work of healing and peace and love in the community. So I kind of wanted to ask you as you think about this. I know I don't have a ton of time left, but start thinking about where are your spheres of influence? Who are the people in your lives that may be needing a space in a community? Or if you truly, which I have had this happen to me before, people have told me on my launch team, I don't really go out of the house much. And the only people I have know are at this church. That is real. Maybe you are listening to this and that's you. I'm not judging you at all. But I might want to start inviting you. What does it look like to expand that sphere of influence? Maybe to your neighbor, maybe to a new grocery store, maybe to a new hair salon. And what does it mean to start meeting new people? It's going to take time. Spheres of influence, it takes a lot of time to build those. I mean, I'm 1 year in and I'm slowly getting there, but I haven't fully fully gotten there, which is why my launch team is critical to this. And your church even has spheres of influence as well. So I just want to kind of invite that question of where are your spheres of influence and who are the people that you can connect to offer those messages that Jesus calls us to. Are there any questions on this passage or on this section?
I love that. I love that. I think that is just a practical tool that anyone could use, is taking a map and making the dots for where it is that you have connections and you engage and spend time.
Yes,
It
exactly.
it might even be telling to our own discipleship to see, the places that we spend our time, and what am I
Yeah.
doing? What am I, in spending that time there? How am I honoring my walk with Christ?
Exactly. Yes, yes. And it even starts this that's a great point because it even I believe the way that kind of I grew up and I'm from the deep south, so everyone's always very nice in the deep south, and you've always got a smile on your face, and sometimes have to show up in your best ways. But I even think it starts with, yeah, being kind in your spheres of influence, sharing a smile with people, starting a conversation with your barista. I know that's really there are a lot of people who I've been able to invite to our new church just because we've built a relationship over time. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, and just that I will just share something that in the
Yeah,
local church that I last served that it was called Myers Meals in May. We discovered kind of doing a spheres of influence that within like a mile radius of our church, there were like 35 restaurants. And
yeah,
most of those restaurants, a lot of them were fast food restaurants. So we spent the month of May going in small groups to different restaurants once a week, and just interacting and the people that were preparing the food, the people who were serving the food, the people who were checking you out, just, building relationships.
yeah,
Um, and that's something anybody could do.
exactly. I totally agree.
We all
And I
have to eat.
think,
We all
yeah,
have to eat.
exactly. We all have to eat. It's true. And sometimes it means going out of your way in a place that you don't normally eat at, but it means meeting new people, and it can be hard, but it's really beautiful when you get to build those relationships and see the regulars who come in. And yeah, it's awesome. Um, yeah, I think that's great. And it also shows, hey, if you have that many restaurants all around you and they can't worship on a Sunday morning because they're working, could you do a Wednesday late night service? Again, this is a both and because it's both not only figuring out who you are as a church and who you can serve, but also who you can invite.
Mhm.
So I just have one last thing I wanted to share. This is kind of a picture of right before we launched. This was our launch team got to do a worship service together. Um, and we talk about this scripture from Luke, and what I want to end on is that Jesus did not send anyone out alone. Jesus sent them all out in pairs. So a lot of people, and everyone went in a way two by two, right? Same like the Noah's Ark story, but everyone went in a pair. And I say that because, I spoke about this with some pastors and leaders, because as a pastor myself, just moving into this area there was no way I was ever going to be able to invite the amount of people who showed up by myself. I mean, I could have. I would have looked a little silly being constantly handing out cards and people wouldn't really take me seriously. But I do what I do because we have a team of people who love what we do, who are passionate about what we do, and know that a part of our vision is to invite people. Our mission is to invite people. And so I say that because if you're a layperson watching this, well, I say this first to pastors because I do think sometimes it can feel like the evangelism may be on our shoulders a lot, but it's not what's supposed to happen. We're supposed to be bringing in our community into that. And it is hard work. I'm not going to lie to you. It's very hard every day to think through how do we invite new people because it gets very easy to, like I said at the beginning, get in the meetings, to do the pastoral care, to worry about the budget. It gets much harder to go out in your community. But I also say this because your leadership team, your attendees, they know a lot of people in their community. They may not see it at first. It maybe have to be a few weeks on teaching this to them and preaching this to them, but um, we're called to do this all together. And not only does it mean that you in your community can impact your whole community, but every church in Western North Carolina, each and every church in the US, that can really slowly and truly start to change the world into what Jesus is calling us into the vision John Wesley had for us. So I just want to say that and end on that because it's really important. Sometimes the work does feel very hard and a little lonely, especially when you invite, and not everyone shows up. It's happened to me before. Um, but I still truly believe that this is how we slowly change the world. So thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Morgan. Thank you so much. If folks wanted to connect with you or ask a question of you after the session, um, is there a way that they could do that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I would say you can always contact me at my phone number, which I can if I send it to you, you can always put it maybe in the description. But
Okay.
my phone number that you can use is it's a Baton Rouge still. One day I'll change it, but it's an easy number. You can always text me or call me at 225-333-0305. Email me will get you to me faster, to be honest. So it's just my name. And I'm gonna yeah, it's just my name. So Morgan dot Dines or Goymer, it doesn't matter, but Morgan dot Dines at gatheringnow.org. So that's the one that I check the most just with the work that I'm doing. And then I also have social media. So my Instagram is at mojo_dogo. And then you can just search my name on Facebook. So a lot of different ways to connect with me. And I will do my very best to respond as much as I can. Again, email is probably the very best way, but I would love to talk about it too. And I will always meet in a Zoom session or over Google Meet for any people who have questions as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think folks, if you reach out to her, let her know you saw her on Equip and Connect, and introduce yourself, especially if you're part of the Western North Carolina Annual Conference, because she's not with us regularly. It'll help her connect and have some friends that she can know
Yes.
and be in relationship with. Uh, Morgan, tell me on your hard days of doing evangelism, what is your mantra, or what is it you turn to remind yourself that you got to keep on keeping on?
Um, I always repeat to myself some combination of basically that God has called me to this. And I don't mean just myself. I do mean that to myself, but I especially mean I really believe in what the gathering is doing, and I really believe it for the Metro East, which is where we're existing. And so it helps me keep what we're doing alive and well for everyone else as well. My hope and prayer is that all churches, everyone who's in a church can say that about their church. And if not, I hope that they can get to a place like that. But also, God has called you to this as well. So it's kind of my
Great.
mantra.
Love it. And I'm so glad that God has called you to this.
Oh,
And
thank you.
my prayer for you is that God will continue to use and bless you, and the more and more connections and spheres of influence that you make, that you'll shine the light of Jesus on people.
Thank
And
you. And I pray that for you all as well.
thank you. All right, friends. I think make sure you're continuing to look on the conference website for the other upcoming Equip and Connects. I think there's one every couple of weeks, and you will want to be a part of that. So, Morgan, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. Good
Thank you,
night,
Sally. Thank
friends.
you, everyone. Good night.
Bye.